Hi everybody, welcome to lesson 10 in Learn to Draw in 30 Days. I'm so glad that you're still drawing with us. Bravo! Practice is what it's all about. The more you do this, the better you'll get. So by day 10, I bet you're already seeing some improvement in your drawings. Congratulations, seriously. One of the most important things to understand in order to make a convincing drawing is how to work with value. So today, we're going to make a value scale and talk all about what that means. So sharpen your pencil, get some paper, let's go. I'm really excited for today's lesson, so let's dive right in. Value is one of my very favorite things to work with. So to start, let's just draw 5 squares across the top of the page. They don't need to be perfect. We're just creating a value scale here. Okay, I'd make them kind of small. Otherwise, you'll be shading in for a while. Okay, so we're going to fill in each of these squares with a different value. And I should say when I'm talking about value, I'm talking about the lights and darks and all the shades in between that exist in your drawing. So beginning on the right, let's fill that square in with the darkest value that you can. So for today, I'm going to be using the same pencil for everything. I'm using an 8B pencil, which is a super soft lead that goes really dark. You don't have to use 8B. Anything with a B would probably work really well. So B, 2B, 4B, 6B, whatever you have handy. If your pencil doesn't have numbers on it, I mean, whatever you have will be fine, I promise. So start on the right, and when you are using just one pencil to shade with, you vary the value by pressing harder or softer with the pencil. So in this box, I'm pressing really hard, and I'm kind of going back over the section a couple times so that it will be super dark. Okay, so that's our darkest value, and we're going to go lighter and lighter and lighter as we move to the left. So scoot over one square now and fill that one in with a little bit lighter value than what you used in the first one. This is kind of a test. Don't get nervous. You're not getting a grade. But it's a test to see, first of all, if you can see the different values and if you can bring them out in your drawings. Okay, see how that one looks a little bit lighter than the first one. Not a dramatic difference at all. All right, moving over to the third square. I'm pressing even lighter this time. You want to make sure that you can see a difference in each of the squares. Okay, there you go. If you need longer than I'm taking, feel free to pause the video at any time. All right, now, the final square on the far left, I'm leaving pure white, the white of the paper. And the reason is because if you're working on a white piece of paper, that's the lightest value that you can get. So we really only have one square left to do. That's this one. And in that square, I'm going to press very gently so that you can hardly see any shade at all. There we go. So see how you can definitely see a difference in all 5 of the squares. That's the goal. And you could draw more squares actually in between each of these, probably several, and still designate different values and be able to distinguish different values between all of those squares. The more value that you can bring out in your drawings, the more realistic it will be, because it's the effects of light and shadow that add roundness and volume to what you draw. So today we're going to make a quick drawing because we've used up some of our time on the value scale, but I wanted to give you the chance to make a drawing where you get to use some of these values and actually do some shading. So I'm going to switch to, let's see, I'm going to grab a 4B pencil. Okay, so let's get started. Here's our reference, cute little pumpkin, and I'm going to draw just the basic shape of it first, kind of an oval shape. You can see I'm using my usual approach of just loose, sketchy lines to get it kind of placed on there. Okay, so there's my round oval shape and line for the stem, which kind of comes right down into the oval to about right here. And then from that point, that's where we get these different segments. So I'm going to go ahead and sketch those in now. One. And you don't have to have the exact same number. It doesn't matter. But one thing to note, this is more of a drawing thing than a shading thing, but it's always good to reinforce what you've learned before. Look at how the segments get smaller as they get further away from us. That's a perspective thing. We haven't had our official perspective lessons yet, but this kind of falls under the category of draw what you see. And you can see each one of these little sections gets smaller and smaller as it gets farther toward the back of the pumpkin. Okay. Just going to clean up my lines a little bit now that I've got everything where I want it. Not even really worrying about erasing what's already there, because the darker line is what we'll see. There we go. Okay, so now let's shade it. And the first question you want to ask yourself whenever you're shading something realistic is, where is the light coming from? In this case, it's pretty obvious in the photo that the light is coming from that direction because all of the highlights are on that side, all of the shadows are over here. And I like to start shading with the darkest value that there is so that I can see the extremes of the value contrast. Some people like to kind of build up from light to dark. So I'm showing you my way, but that definitely is not the only way. So I'm going to identify where I see kind of the darkest values, and I'm just going to start filling them in. There. And only where it's that value. So there are other areas where it's maybe more in the middle value range. I'm not worrying about those yet. I'm only putting value down where I see the darkest. Just like coloring without color. So it's nothing like coloring. Now, shading tricks. If you're seeing a lot of pencil lines in your shading, it might mean you're going a little too fast. So just slow down. Let one brush, or not brush stroke, one pencil stroke kind of overlap the one before it so that they just kind of blend together and you don't end up with a lot of like scratchy looking lines. It also does help to have extra paper underneath the piece that you're drawing on for added cushion. So if you're working in a sketchbook, that's great. Or if you're just working on loose paper, get some extra paper to put under it. It does make a big difference. I'm still just putting my darkest value for now, and then we'll start working our way through the value scale. Okay, see maybe. Wait, that's that. No, there's no real super dark ones there, but there is darkness on the stem. Okay, got some smudges. Not the first time, won't be the last. One other thing that I like to do when I'm shading in a drawing is to think about the value of the background. And that dark background is what makes the highlights pop out. So you don't want to have to color in your whole paper and be here for a while. I'm just going to go right along the edge. Just shade, kind of almost like creating a reverse sort of halo around the object so that we can just see the values in the background. And then I just like to let that fade as it gets farther away from the object. So by pressing the hardest right next to the pumpkin, and then as I move away from the pumpkin, pressing lighter and lighter until it just kind of fades. So you're sort of like going through the value scale right there. And even on this side, where it's up against the dark value on the inside of the pumpkin, I'm still going to do it, because if you notice in the photo, in those spaces, the pumpkin does kind of just fade into the background. You can't really see a defined edge. And if that's what it looks like in the reference, that's what you're trying to replicate. So that's a good example of drawing what you see instead of what you know. We know there's an edge of a pumpkin there, but at least in a few of these areas, you really can't see it. And just let your background kind of fade as you get away from the object. And it's also going to kind of blend in with the dark side of the stem too. The dark side. Sounds very ominous. Okay. There we go. You can shade in more of the background if you want, but that's enough to... It's all about the relationships. Value is very much dependent on understanding the relationships. Value will look one way and then totally different if you put it next to a different value. Color does that too, actually. All right, so now I've done everything with the darkest value, and I need to sharpen my pencil before I do any more. Now I'm going to go through and look for places where I can use this value, the kind of second from the right. And I see a value like that that kind of goes all the way up along this edge. You can see how each segment of the pumpkin sort of becomes round because each section has its own light and dark side. Depending on how far away it is from the light, that determines whether it's more in this range or in this range or the full range. It's called a value scale, which is very similar to like a piano scale where you're going through all the different keys. In fact, you can even use that term, the keys, to refer to value. High key, low key refers to darks and lights. There's a lot of parallels between visual art and music. Even though I have no musical ability at all, I appreciate music. I'm not going to sing for you though, I promise. Don't worry. I only do that when I'm drawing completely by myself. Okay, and there's a little bit of that value here. Okay, and now I'm going to move on to the middle value, and so that just allows me to continue some of what I have started. You see that another trick that I use sometimes is shading with the edge of the pencil instead of the tip. See how I'm kind of holding it on its side? If you shade with the tip of the pencil, it tends to look a little bit more liney, which can be an interesting look. But if you want it to be softer, putting it on its side a little bit will help with that. Okay. And we are just about done here. I'm going to do a little bit of my lightest value now. That's what I see over here. Here. And here. And there you go. You've made your very first shaded drawing in this class. Practice drawing some other objects. Put a strong light source on it. Look where you see the shadows and give it a try. And there you go. Great job, everybody. Be sure to join our Facebook group, Art Makes Us, and share your art. Love seeing your progress, how you're doing in the class. Now that you understand value, come back and join us for our next lesson, lesson number 11, which is all about finding the light. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.